Welcome to the Weather Insights Briefing. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney along with meteorologist Jeff Lindner. We are recording this on Wednesday, January 8th, and we've got some winter weather headed toward Texas. We are looking at the moisture profiles, this mid-level moisture profiles, and we see the low, the mid-level low there over Baja. That's looking very impressive, Jeff. And unfortunately, it's also playing along with a high pressure gradient north of there, and you can visibly see very clearly where those clouds are, with where the pointer is. That pressure gradient is causing those winds, very high winds coming off the Sierra Nevadas, and that's what's fueling those fires out in the Southern California area, mainly the Los Angeles area, some very highly populated areas that we'll get to in a minute. Let's talk about Texas weather first and how this low, this very El Nino looking low, as far as the position, is going to be moving in our general direction. You see the subtropical jet there, that's going to bring in fuel, and this is Wednesday, and we had 2 previous days of nothing but sunny skies, and now it's been nothing but cloudy. So that's just the precursor to what's going to be coming on in the form of rain for the southern and southeast part of Texas, mostly the coast. But then we also are looking at winter precipitation to the north and to the west of the area. So we'll just take a look at some of the watches and warnings. The areas in pink are winter storm warnings for those areas. In the most populated area, obviously the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So if you have plans to go to the Cotton Bowl, be weather aware of that particular situation, because it doesn't look like that's going to go away anytime soon. The rain and sleet and freezing rain and snow and everything's going to be falling. And those temperatures are going to be right around that freezing mark. So those driving conditions can be fairly hazardous. I've personally driven up in an ice storm in the Dallas area. It is not fun. Not fun anywhere, but especially in highly populated areas like that. And then that area of pink continues over into Arkansas. And then we have a small area out in West Texas that's under a winter storm watch. For Southeast Texas, we are looking at those rainfall amounts. The models the last day or so have been running to 1 to 2 inches, and now those models have bumped up a little bit to 2 to 3 and possibly higher amounts. A lot of it depends how close that coastal low will be to the coast as it moves through our area. But that is, you can see those heavier rain amounts in the reddish areas right there, and Houston area is in the bullseye of that. So don't expect winter precipitation. If you kind of draw a line around the I-35 corridor north of, say I-20 and then west of that I-35, that's where most of the wintry precip will be. Now down by College Station, we could see some mix, possibly some sleet, and don't even be surprised if you might hear a few sleet pellets here in the Houston area, but the air is just too warm up in the upper atmosphere and on the surface to see any wintry precipitation around here, Jeff, which is quite a bit different from what we were talking about a week ago.
Yep, this is why we tell people don't look at those deterministic models.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and you're looking at the deterministic models, you're getting ready for a plowable snowstorm if they even have plows up there. And now you're looking at a mixture of rain, sleet, freezing rain, and a little bit of snow as we get into Thursday night and Friday. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But yeah, this is going to be a good widespread rain here. This is, it's going to start tomorrow mid-morning-ish and really ramp up as we get into Thursday afternoon, Thursday night, some heavy rains coming across the area. I don't anticipate any flooding with this. It's kind of spread out enough. Maybe down like right along the coast where that coastal low gets pretty close to the coast, we could get a little bit of ponding on some of the roadways. As you mentioned, back off to the north and west in the colder air where the surface temperatures are closer to freezing or a little bit below, we do anticipate a little bit of ice. And so I'm going to zoom in. This is kind of the wide view. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So we're talking back here into the western part of the hill country, back to the northwest towards San Angelo, the Midland area, back to Big Bend. If we do get a tenth of an inch, that's kind of the threshold where we start looking at the power lines and we start looking at the tree limbs. But this is probably mostly a travel issue back in this area, probably your bridges and overpasses. I don't know if surface streets are going to have issues or not. The ground's warm The surface temperature is going to be pretty marginal. We're talking, 30, 31, 32. My experience is you really got to kind of get down to the upper 20s to start getting ice on some of the surface streets and stuff like that. And so I think this is probably a pretty minor ice event. And the same thing up here in Northeast Texas. And then in between that, we kind of have the snow, and there's certainly the possibility in some of these areas where you start as freezing rain, you go over to sleet, and you end to snow. And so you kind of have that little bit of layer of ice under that snow cover. And sometimes that gives you the false impression that you can get out there and drive on it. You can't because there's just no traction on that. The other concern I have, especially kind of around the Dallas Fort Worth area, is the snow falls and it sort of melts on the warmer concrete asphalt areas. And then as you get into Friday evening, it freezes. We got colder air coming back in behind the storm system later on Friday. We could have bigger issues as we get into Friday night and Saturday morning because there's just not going to be any time for this to evaporate or dry up. And so if you're heading up here Friday or Thursday, you probably get up here more Thursday morning, you'll be fine. By Thursday afternoon, evening, things are going to go downhill. Friday, things are not going to improve at all. And I don't anticipate much improvement on the travel conditions in this area, north, Dallas over towards Northeast Texas into Arkansas until sometime on Saturday when we warm up, we get the sun and we warm up into the 50s and 40s and 50s. And so, one other thing I'll mention, we're going to keep an eye on this. So you can see we're putting in snow cover off here to our north. We're going to have to keep an eye on Friday night here, Saturday morning, locally here in
Yeah.
Southeast Texas. We are anticipating another freeze. And with that north wind on the backside of the storm system blowing across the snowpack, it wouldn't surprise me if temperatures maybe trended downward a little bit. And so right now we're looking nothing worse than what we had earlier this week, upper 20s, low 30s. We've already dealt with that. But could we trend down a few degrees? It is possible as we get into Saturday morning, just because you got that wind coming off of the snowpack up here. And the last thing to kind of mention is uh, the index here. This is what we call the Winter Storm Severity Index. And that's a big fancy word for what are the impacts going to be. And so the impacts, generally speaking, with winter weather are travel and power. And so this is probably more of a travel impact situation. Power impacts from the ice and stuff, maybe over here into Northeast Texas. But as you can see, there is the potential here for moderate to potentially major travel impacts in the Dallas Fort Worth area onto the Northeast as we get into late Thursday and through the day on Friday. And so, again, heading up here, you'll be fine up here, Centerville, Madisonville, probably even up as far north as Buffalo, those areas. And then that's when things could get a little dicey. And of course, obviously, if you've been up to the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex, they got just as many high bridges as we do here in Houston, if not more. And all of those
Yeah.
potentially could be really big issues as we get into Friday up here. So, you're going to have to take it careful, slow. And if you don't have to go up there, I certainly wouldn't be going up there just because the travel concerns are certainly there, and they'll probably still be there as we get into Friday night and even Saturday morning. Again, down here in Houston, it's all going to be rain. It's going to be about the most miserable, raw, cold day on Thursday as we get down here in Southeast Texas. We're talking cloudy, rainy, windy with temperatures in the upper 30s and low 40s. It really just doesn't get that much worse down here unless we're on a full scale winter storm down here. But again, it's all going to be liquid down here. It's all going to be wet. We're all going to have to go to school and work on Friday. And then this will pass on to the east, and the weekend looks actually pretty decent before we get into another surge of cold air early next week. And so we're kind of in this pattern, even looking a week or two out, kind of keeps reloading, and we keep getting fronts in here every few days. So the very mild winter we've had so far is going to be a thing of the past here over the next 7 days or so.
Yeah, we might even hit 60 on Sunday, but we'll appreciate the warm up after it being so chilly. And yeah, you mentioned it's going to be miserable. Allow yourself extra driving time for Friday, not because of wintry percent, but just because of rain, and it's going to be a mess, like you said, Jeff. So
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, we talked about the fires in Southern California earlier. These markers are showing where the current fires are, and anywhere in Southern California, I've been there many times, and anywhere out there is highly populated. And the further north you go of LA, you start to get into the mountains and the trees, and that's where all the fuel is for the fire. And like we saw with the Maui fire, we had two pressure gradients coming off the mountains there. And when those winds come off the mountains, it's just like a waterfall coming off, and they pick up speed. And, we're seeing winds out there, approaching category 2 type hurricane winds in the 90s. And you get that combination with that dry timber, and you get these conditions. I think the biggest concern, just looking at this map right now, I mean, they're all big concerns, but that Palisades fire is probably the most densely populated. And the other concern too is, you get down to Pacific Coast Highway, there's nowhere to go. If you're trying to evacuate this, you're at the end of your rope right there. So hopefully those folks are paying attention to their local government officials, paying attention to the warnings and taking action, and getting out of the way of these fires. Of course, very expensive properties too, all along there. And this isn't going away anytime soon, because we're seeing little spotty fires just like we see in this map. But there's other smaller pockets, yeah, where your pointer is, all over the place. And I just hope that these are none of these are man-made. I mean, that just is terrible. But the fact is that we have these fires now in Southern California, and the wind is not helping.
Yeah, and this was actually a well forecast event. The Weather Service
Yeah,
office in Los Angeles was putting out very strong wording, not only for the fire potential, but for the wind potential, just the damaging potential of the wind, blowing trees down, blowing power lines down, damaging roofs, that type of stuff from the wind speeds themselves. And things really went south last night, and we initially had the Palisades fire that has now burned, like you said, burning from the wildland interface into the urban interface. And this is unfortunately issues you get when you kind of run up the population against the wildland interface. And you can see these canyons here to the north, the wind coming from the north, down through those canyons, funneling through those canyons, and fanning these fires out of the canyons and then into the urban area. And if you look at some satellite photos out here, especially over here in the Palisades fire, it's homes very close together. And so when one house catches fire, there's very little that can be done with these types of winds to
yeah,
stop it from spreading to the next house and the next house and the next house. And last night there was very little that could be done on a firefighting standpoint, with air resources were grounded because of the winds. There's just nothing firefighters could even do on the ground. Even if they attempted to put the fire out on a structure, they weren't going to win when the wind is blowing, 60, 70 miles an hour. The best they could do is try to create a line and hold that line. And in some cases, we're talking embers being blown a quarter or a half a mile from the fires. And you have all these spot fires that are breaking out ahead of the containment lines, which are virtually zero at this point. But you can see kind of the burn footprints here, again, coming out of the canyons and the hills into the populated areas, both at the Palisades, Santa Monica area, and then up here in the Pasadena, Altadena area. And we'll see. We don't know. We don't have really any clue what the numbers are. I know they're going to be bad. I mean, when we
yeah,
start talking fires burning into, subdivisions, if you imagine a subdivision here in Houston, with homes close together, you can burn a lot of homes really quickly. And so we don't know what the numbers are going to be. Hopefully, people are able to get out. We had all kinds of issues with evacuations up here in the Palisades fire area where people just couldn't get out.
yeah,
And so we don't know. In emergency management, we always say is how bad is bad. We just don't know right now the situation here in Southern California. We're not going to know probably for another day or two, because the effort right now is trying to get some containment on these fires. And you can see the wind still just howling. We're talking
yeah.
61, very close to that Palisades fire area, 90 right here, close to Anaheim and Santa Ana, California.
Incredible.
Widespread 50s and 60s all over this place. And there's just no way you can fight any type of urban or wildland fire with these types of winds. And so
Mhm.
Mother Nature is going to have to help, and we're going to have to bring these winds down. And they do come down tonight and into tomorrow, and that should allow ground crews and air crews to start to get some containment on these fires. But unfortunately, the damage here has been done, and like I said, we just don't know right now is how many homes, how many structures are we talking? Is it thousands? Is it hundreds? My guesstimate is we're probably talking thousands of structures have been lost.
Yeah, unfortunately. Unfortunately. Well, our thoughts are with those folks out in California. That is not a good place to be right now. So we will keep you updated on our weather and weather around the country, weather events around the country. Of course, you can do that by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Make sure you click on the subscribe button and also the notifications to get the latest Weather Insights briefings. And also check out our Weather Insights website and check out the blog there. I'll have all those links in the show notes. Jeff, thank you very much. Until next time.